Hey everybody, Jeff Schmidt here, and welcome to our Tuesday night live stream. And I have Jill on with us, our producer. She's going to be helping us through the labyrinth of questions that we have both written in and also that come on the screen. Before we begin, let me just read the disclaimer required by the state of New York. And it's as follows. Many of the questions we covered here are nuanced. We do our best to answer them, but our responses are meant to be directional, not exact. Your situation may require more detail than we can give in a live stream. This live stream is for educational purposes only. We haven't had the chance to speak with you one-on-one, so please treat this information as general guidance, not advice to act on. For any specific situation, any specific information regarding your situation, please make sure you talk to a qualified professional. Speaking of qualified professionals, if you have questions about Medicare, give our trusted Medicare partner chapter a call, 440-703-1224, to see if they can help. I will put their number right on the screen here, and then we can jump right into it. All right. I think that's my part. Jill, over to you to lead the way.
Thank you, Jeff. As always, a reminder, please do put your questions into the chat box as they pertain to Social Security. We will be taking mainly questions related to Social Security tonight. We will be taking them from the chat box and also from the emailed questions as well. So we'll go back and forth and hopefully we'll get as many questions answered as possible. All right, so let's start with a question from email from Pete. I'm 66 and collecting Social Security. What expenses can my minor child's Social Security dependent benefits be used for? Can they be used for health insurance premiums and household expenses, such as utilities?
The answer is yes. If the expenses support the child's current needs, you can use them for those needs. A representative payee, that's what you are, can use benefits for food, housing, utilities, medical insurance, clothing, school expenses, and similar needs. Important point to note there that any money not needed for current support should be saved for the child.
All right, great. So into the chat box, we have a question from JWJX3TQ. And the question is there a formula that considers when to take Social Security to lessen RMDs? What are the disadvantages to being single in this process in terms of taxes?
Yeah, that's a big question, and it deals with required minimum distributions a lot more than Social Security. So let me just talk about the concept of required minimum distributions. RMDs are, for most people watching this live stream, at 73, if you've saved well, you're going to be facing something called a required minimum distribution. And it's a formula. I believe it's 126.5. I don't even know how you would say that. 126 and some change of the balance in your IRA or your 401k at December 31st. That's the minimum you need to pay out. That's because the federal government wants its taxes. Now, you can manage two different things at one time. RMDs also increase your taxable income, and if you're increasing your taxable income with RMDs, the taxable portion of your Social Security payment could get larger. And so the strategy, if you want to call it that, it will depend on how much you actually have coming out of your 401k or your IRA. There are qualified charitable distributions at 70 and a half, which can help mitigate this issue. But specifically between the interplay between Social Security and RMDs, you'll really need to focus in on what the combination looks like. It's too complicated to go over in a live stream, but it is something that people deal with all of the time. And so if this is something that you need specific information on, send your data to livestream@holyschmidt.com. And if it's simple, I'll probably come back to you myself. If it's more complicated, I'll suggest someone who can work with you. I know a few that their initial consultation is free and they can answer this question with your specific data.
All right, great. So Stingray is asking, please explain spousal benefits. Another big question.
I love this. I love the big open-ended questions. Spousal benefit is something that the Social Security Administration put in place. I guess it was in the 50s, maybe it was in the 60s. The SSA has gone through about a dozen big amendments, and one of those was adding spousal benefits. And basically what spousal benefits are is it's an adjacent benefit to the benefit that the primary worker, the primary insured receives, and it can be up to 50% of the amount that the primary insured is receiving from Social Security. And so a lot of that all depends on the age of the spouse. And so if the spouse is 62, for example, and their full retirement age is age 67, then they get 32.5% of the primary insurance amount. And if they were full retirement age 67, then they get 50% of the PIA. But it's a benefit, you paid for it. It's not something that is gifted to you. In fact, Social Security, the whole program is you're entitled to it. People get really weird about the word entitled because they think they confuse entitlement programs with those that are available to everybody, like Social Security, with entitlement programs that have a negative connotation. Social Security is called an entitlement program, but it doesn't mean the same thing.
All right. And I know, Jeff, that you do talk a lot about spousal benefits in your course.
Yeah,
right?
I
So
do.
I will put that link in the chat box.
Not very, very timely mention. I do have a course. It's called Social Security Simplified. And the tagline is go from beginner to confident in 5 hours. And it's a 5-hour course. I poured 6 months of work into this course. And I found, I mean, I researched things that nobody would want to know about Social Security. There's little nuggets of information all over this course. And so if it's of interest to you, then you can go to holyschmidt.com/social security, all one word. And if we have a coupon code 60 off for $60 off the course. So just type in 60 off and you can get 60 off of the course for being on the live stream tonight.
Okay. And if you go into the chat box, you will see I have put that link there along with the coupon code. All right. So let's go to Troy with an emailed question. He's asking if my earnings from age 67 to 70 are lower than previous years, can higher earning years still replace lower earning years in my Social Security benefit calculation?
They can, and people do it. By and large, though, Troy, by and large, from 67 to 70, the impact isn't what you would think. And let me explain what I'm talking about. The way your Social Security payment is calculated is that it's your 35 best years of earnings after you index those in today's dollars. The classic example, I use it on almost every live stream, is that in 1996, if you earned $10,000, today that $10,000 would get an index of a 4.0. So it would be multiplied times 4, and that would be the equivalent of earning $40,000 today when it comes to your Social Security calculation. If the SSA didn't do that, your payment would be tiny. Well, by the time you reach 67, most people have had 35, 40 years of earnings. And so what may be rolling off is not necessarily the small earnings anymore. And so check your earnings history, go to ssa.gov and check your earnings history and really, because I wouldn't want you to work for 3 years just to see if you can get an extra couple of percent on your Social Security payment. Now, if you wait until 70 and you are doing that because you want to pick up an extra 24% in the size of your payment, because that's approximately the increase 8% per year from age 67 to 70, that's a different story, because that is a meaningful life changer. 124% of your full retirement age benefit, if it's 2000, becomes 24, what's it, 2480, something like that. It's a big number, but it's not the game changer if you're talking about 3 years and you have some good years rolling off, only to get a little bit better years rolling back on. So do the calculation. That way you might not give up 3 years of your life if you wanted to retire at 67.
All right. Bill Proctor is asking, I'm currently 63. When I turn 70, my wife will be 62. What work restrictions will she face if she retires early at 62? And does my income affect those restrictions in any way?
So I think this is a question about Social Security and the earnings test. If that's not the case, Bill, just put it in the chat. But once you stop working, there is no earnings test. If your wife continues to work and collect Social Security, she's going to be faced with an earnings test. And by the way, I show this every time. This one-page document is the game changer for anybody that wants to look really smart at parties. Just go in the bathroom and scan the document and come back out with the answer. But it has basically the amount. It has a lot of information, but one of the data points on here is the earnings test. And the earnings test is $24,480 per year. And if your wife earns less than that, then she'll get the full spousal benefit, or at least the benefit she's entitled to at age 62. It's reduced versus full retirement age. But if she's not working, then there's no earnings test. If that's not the question, Bill, just put it back in the chat and just clarify. We'll come back at it again from a different angle.
All right. We have Tony Monero on tonight from Saturday.
God, I love that name.
Yeah.
I love that name. Saturday Night Fever. We figured that out a couple of live streams ago. Go ahead, Tony. Lay it on us.
All right. So does Social Security public and official calculation model, is it an official calculation model for beneficiaries to calculate their PIA? Index percent, Ben points, are earnings after age 62 ignored for benefits calculations?
So what Tony's asking is, there's a calculation to determine your Social Security payment. It's the amount you earned, your best 35 years. We talked about that a minute ago, indexed to today's dollars, and then divided by 420. And the reason you do that is because that is the beginning calculation for your Social Security payment. 35 years is also 420 months. So you take your best 35 years divided by 420 months and you have a number. And that number is fed into a calculation called Ben points. And what comes out the other end is the amount you receive at full retirement age. And it's not a progressive calculation. It's a regressive calculation, because the more you earn, the less you get back per dollar contributed. So at age 62, a lot of people think that calculation stops, because the multiplier that we talked about earlier, 4.0, stops, and at age 60 and beyond, it's a 1.0 multiplier. That does not mean that the earnings stop, though. If you earned $180,000 a year, I'm just picking a really big number, that's going to impact the size of your Social Security payment. And if you earn $5,000 more a year than you earned during the previous 35 years on average, it won't. So no, it does continue to calculate. And if you have big earnings years, you're going to see some movement. Now you got to be saying, Jeff, but you just said to one of the other respondents, if it's 3 years, what's the big difference? Most of the time, it's not that big, because you have 35 years of earnings, and so you have some lower earnings years rolling off and higher earnings years coming back on. But net, the impact for a lot of people is just a few percentage points. But if you have a big earnings year, it could make a difference.
All right, the sheet that Jeff held up just a little bit ago is the Social Security Quick Guide, and I have actually put the link for that into the chat box if anybody would like to click on there and go get it.
Absolutely free. No phone number, no credit card, nothing like that. Just put in your info, and it'll be right there instantly. You could probably even do it while you're on the live stream here, but don't go away.
Okay, and a few people have been filling out a quiz as well. James 104D said it was very helpful. John Sipperly also said it was great as well. So do we have a link for that, for the quiz?
Yep. So this is the retirement readiness quiz. It's 15 questions. It takes 2 minutes. You get a 12-page report. And basically the 15 questions they're not leading questions. Some of these quizzes that you take, the outcome is for you to make a call to somebody, and they're a little suspect, shall we say. They aren't. This isn't that. You do go on our list, and you get emails from us a couple of times a week. You can unsubscribe at any time, but they're really, really useful emails. But this quiz it gives you what I call the biggies of retirement. And so when you fill it out, it takes 2 minutes, and then you get a 12-page report emailed to you. All you do is you go to holyschmidt.com/quiz, QUIZ, holyschmidt.com/quiz. Fill out the quiz, fill out the questions. You get the results in a nice 12-page report sent to you within about 30 seconds.
Perfect. I will put that into the chat box in just a minute. All right, so BR549 is asking, when signing up for Social Security, do they break down the math for you as to how they came up with the figure of your monthly benefit? For example, are you told what Social Security has as your AIME and PIA figure? And what if your math for the AIME figure is different than what SSA says it is? Can I contest their number?
So do they give you the opportunity to audit them? They should. It's a wonderful question. And in fact, I'm writing a book. It's going to go in the book, and I'll be making some announcement on that in a little while. But it is a great question. You should be able to do it. You can do it indirectly because they do provide you with your earnings history online, and then you just need to take that and drop it into the bend points formula. But they don't say, okay, in 1986, you earned $10,000, and that's indexed to 4.0, and all of this stuff adds up to $1 million or $2 million or $5 million, whatever your number is. You divide that by 420, and then these are the breakpoints. They don't do that for you. You kind of have to do that yourself, but the information is available. Do they make mistakes? Sure, they make mistakes, but first of all, it's not intentional. A lot of people get really suspicious with government, and they think that the information is intentionally skewed one way or the other. It's not intentional. You've got just some older systems. The people at the SSA are really nice people. They're good people, and they don't do that. But you should check your math. Make sure that there aren't missing earnings years. That's the big thing. If you had an old employer that was a little sketchy and they didn't report your earnings because they didn't want to report the FICA, and so they told you that they did, but they didn't really, well, then that's something for you to work on. Believe me when I tell you, I've seen things like this happen all of the time. And we have a community called the Retire Well community, and we have people who take the course Social Security Simplified, and they're part of this community. And I talk to them, and you would be surprised at how much it's not always, but almost always it's the employer, not the government, who was doing something sketchy back in the 90s, and now they're trying to figure out what to do. So audit your numbers, and then you can get the 35 years of history on there and just put it in the formula yourself.
All right, Ed 2005 is asking, I started collecting my Social Security benefits at age 70. Should my wife start her Social Security at full retirement age or age 70 to maximize our benefits? She is currently 65 now.
Sorry, is that the spousal benefit, Ed, or are you talking about her own benefit?
let's see, I started collecting my benefits at age 70. Should my wife start her Social Security
So it is hers.
full retirement age or at age 70 to maximize our benefits?
So this is a good question, and it's one. It's a thoughtful question because people have so many choices. What ends up happening is you get bombarded with bad information. I mean, I get really frustrated with this, but people get bombarded with bad information. And on the one hand, you have the world's coming to an end. You got to take Social Security now. On the other hand, everybody should wait until age 70 because that's when you get the biggest payment. The reality is it's not the case on either end most of the time. There was a report done at the University of Michigan, not a report, a study done at the University of Michigan, and they found that over 90% of the people who claim Social Security did it at the wrong time in both directions. It wasn't everybody was piling in at 62. You had people that were piling in at 62 that should have waited because of their circumstances. Then you had people who were waiting until 70 and they were the the richest person in the graveyard because they just people are afraid. People are afraid to spend money. One thing that we probably should focus more on is decumulation on this channel. I might put some videos out on that. But the bottom line is that it does depend on your specific situation. You need to weigh your what you want out of the future. You need to weigh what you have in investments and other savings. You need to weigh things like the survivor benefit and on both ends. And you need to look at potential costs ahead. One that is a big cost, and it's a shocker if people don't see it coming, is long-term care. It is a shocker because all of a sudden something happens. Rarely do people go into long-term care slowly. Something happens, they fall and they break a hip or something like that, and then boom, they're on long-term care. And it's a shocker because the day before everything was fine. There was no warning. So that is actually, you could look at Social Security two different ways. You could say, you know what, I want the maximum benefit because if that happens to me, I want the biggest payment, or I don't need it. Maybe I want to save it. But it does depend on your specific situation. Those are the parameters. Those are the way to think about things. And if it's something that you have interest in, we do cover this in the course, very specifically on this issue.
All right, perfect. Let's take an emailed question from Joyce. Do you have any tips for reaching Social Security by phone without spending hours on hold?
So I'm going to give you the official response from the SSA, and then I'm going to tell you what I think. The official response is try calling in the morning early, right when they open, and near the end of the week. There is truth to that. The same truth holds whether you're calling Social Security or you're calling some retail store where you're making an airline reservation, I suppose. That's probably the best example because they both feel about the same. The reality is just take your phone, call it, put it on speakerphone and set it down and do something else because you're going to be there a while. And you got to just accept that. I think you'll be there less if you do it the way that they describe at the end of the week, earlier in the morning, but it's going to take some time. So just pick your favorite article to read or whatever, and they're not going to hang up on you, at least not intentionally. So just you're gonna have to sit on hold, unfortunately.
All right, Brenda's asking, I lived with my former husband for 5 years before we married, but our marriage lasted less than 10 years before divorce. Can the years we lived together count towards Social Security divorced spouse benefits?
Probably not. No. The 10-year rule is a pretty steadfast rule, and the reason is because there are a lot of people that lived together before they got married, but there's no proof. And there's no proof that the intensity of the relationship was husband and wife. Yeah, I suppose there are some common law issues there, but by and large, I wouldn't think so. I do think that it's worth a call to the SSA to have a discussion with them just to make sure. But I've never actually heard of this being successful.
All right. James Schneck is asking, at 65, is it better to start Social Security and not pull from investments, or pull from investments and let Social Security monthly amount grow?
This is a question we get every live stream, and it's a question we get in the Retire Well community. It's a question I get on the website in the comments section. Think of Social Security and investments as two different things. Social Security, the increases are guaranteed, and the month after month the payment comes in, and there's not a lot of variability in that. If you have your money in the market, and you have, right now we've had a couple of good years, we have a couple of great years, really, several in fact. If you have your money in the market and the market looks like it's doing well, and you want to take some out, you can. People do it, but just understand the risk you're taking in doing that, because markets go up and markets go down, and you don't want to sell in a down market because you're going to have something called sequence of return risk. And that basically means that if you had an average 8% return on your portfolio over the last 30 years, and you happen to sell when the market crashed 50%, even though you averaged 8%, you're selling at the wrong time, and you're not going to have the same outcome as if you were selling when you were up 50% and then taking a bit out. So a lot of it depends on your specific circumstances. People do it all the time. There are calculators that you can use to determine this. Bolden, one of our affiliates, has a really good planning deck inside the software. I use Bolden personally. That's the only software that I use, personal financial planning software. If you're interested in Bolden, by the way, you can just go to go.bolden.com/Schmidt, and you can get Bolden for 2 weeks for free. After that, it's $12 a month paid annually if you decide to keep it. It's a wonderful program. It's a wonderful software, actually. And you can actually model this out a lot better in software than you can do in your head, or I can explain on a live stream.
All right, and I just put the link for anyone that would like to check out Bolden's software for that 2-week free trial. All right, so let's go back to our questions. I will be 62 next year. Is my Social Security benefit estimate pretty accurate, or will it be higher or lower?
Social Security estimates have a lag, and they're not much of a lag, but for example, if you looked at your estimate on December 31st and you retired in March, it's not going to capture those last 3 months, but it's going to be pretty close. The one thing that becomes a problem is if you retire in a year or 2 or 3 years, because number one, it assumes that your earnings continue like they are today. All of those estimates that you see assume that your earnings don't change, which may or may not be the case, but none of them include the cost of living adjustment, because nobody knows what the COLA number is going to be next year. And so that is the number in today's dollars, but you could have this year especially, you could have a 3% COLA adjustment. Who knows? Maybe more. And so that's not going to be figured into the number. And even if you're 3 months out, if you were talking about a November or September estimate, and the COLA adjustment hadn't been built in yet, you're going to miss it in the numbers. So it's reasonably close-ish, but it assumes that everything is up to date, and occasionally things have to get corrected afterwards. You're not going to lose anything. Just make sure that you identify what it is. If you think that think that there's a miss. But as I said before, the people at the SSA are pretty good people.
All right. Marie Helene is saying, best 35 years, I worked for 50.
Yep. Yeah. And actually, this is an argument that I've put forward in a number of different articles on the issue. There's a provision in the SSA that says that someone gets their best 35 years of earnings after it's been indexed to today's dollars. Well, what happened to your other 15? Well, they roll off. Is that right? I don't know. I could put an argument that says you shouldn't do that because someone worked for 50 and contributed to 50. Equally, I could say, but you got to draw the line somewhere. And where is that line? It was a number that some politician somewhere decided long ago, and that was the basis. But yep, I hear you. The good news is that if you work for 50, you got at least 35 years that are going to be better than 15 of the years. So 15 will roll off. Your worst 15 will roll off. And on the flip side, the SSA does index your earnings. They don't say that your earnings from 1986 are going to be $10,000. We're only going to count that. We're going to adjust it up. So I suppose on one hand, they take something away. On the other hand, they give it back in a different form.
All right. Kenneth Shear is asking, I filed for Social Security benefits before full retirement age. How can I find out what my benefit would have been if I waited for full retirement age? There you go.
Just go on to holyschmidt.com/quick guide, and you'll see on the left the percentage of payment people receive at different ages. Let's say you were at 62, and it shows right there that you're receiving 70% of what you would have received at full retirement age. Well, then you can imply then that if you had waited until full retirement age, that you divide what you're receiving now by 70%, and that'll give you your full retirement age benefit.
Okay, great. So now we have a question from Avail Worldwide. If I collect Social Security at 62 and work part-time every other year with earned income that exceed the limit, can I suspend my Social Security for that year and restart the following year when I'm not working to avoid the penalty?
You can't suspend it, but what you can do is you can let the SSA know that you're going to go through the minimum and ask them to withhold more. And what they do with that is almost the same thing. If they withhold what you had to give back or what you would have received, the excess that you received, it sort of acts in the same manner, because if you recalculate every time you give something back, you're recalculating, assuming that is given back to you at full retirement age. Once you reach full retirement age, everything that was withheld is given back to you in the form of a larger payment. So I wouldn't trust the math, because you're actually asking them to recalculate every other year. It's not a clean shot, like if you had just not taken it. But it's a backdoor way of getting kind of close, I suppose.
Okay, so we're going to take an emailed question from Brenda. I lived with my former husband for 5 years before we married. Oh, I think we did that one. Ken. We're going to take Ken's question. It's the same question. Interesting. All right, Beth, is there an ideal month to start Social Security benefits?
This is one of those questions. This is a variation of the common question, when's the best month to retire? A lot of it depends on taxes, to be frank. If you're having a big tax year and you want to wait because you want your bonus in the following year to even it out a bit, well, then you would retire later. As far as the actual math with Social Security, it doesn't really matter. If you turn 67, and I'm just using 67 as an example, in January or February or March or September, October, November, the payment structure is going to work exactly the same way. So there isn't really a best month. A lot of it really depends on what your other obligations are and the other things going on in your life, because that's really the key determinant. I've often said that people spend more time thinking about their next vacation than they do thinking about when to take Social Security. So it's a very good question because you're thinking the right things. But most of the decision is just what's happening at that time in your life.
All right, James is asking if I've had a Roth IRA for more than 20 years and am now retired. If I do a Roth conversion today, does the 5-year conversion rule still apply?
Yes, but there are two different 5-year rules. Your long-standing Roth IRA satisfies the 5-year rule for qualified earnings, but each Roth conversion has its own 5-year clock for avoiding the 10% early withdrawal penalty. If you're under 59 and a half, that is, if you're over 59 and a half, then there is the penalty generally disappears.
Okay. BR549 is asking if I turn 62 in 2024, do I use the wage increase factor figures to arrive at my AIME from 2024 or from the year I decide to turn on Social Security?
Sorry, would you repeat the question?
Yes, if I turn 62 in 2024, do
Mhm.
I use the wage increase factor figures to arrive at my AIME from 2024 or from the year I decided to turn on Social Security?
So the wage index factors, everything from age 60 on, you have a multiplier of 1. And so there is no wage index factor when you're 64. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't still look at those earnings and say, well, does this qualify as one of my best 35 years? But there's nothing that gets indexed after age 59. So from 60 onward, you have a wage index factor of 1.
Okay. Fast Eddie's asking, how is unemployment added into your income as well as your Social Security benefit?
I'm sorry. Would you repeat the question?
How is unemployment added into your income as well as your Social Security benefit? How is it added into your Social Security benefit?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Question. All right,
Is
Fast
it
Eddie.
is it a question about calculating earned income? Is it a question about whether your Social Security benefit counts towards whether unemployment counts towards Social Security benefits? We need more information. Maybe email that question to livestream@holyschmidt.com.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Where's the next question? All right. So Tony Monero has a question. S&P calendar year 2008 was 40%. The previous 20 years was 10% annual average, but the negative 40% and several smaller down years dragged the 25-year down to only, I think this is just a comment, down to only 9% annual average. Okay, so I think that was just a conversation in the chat box. All right, Wanda is asking, if FICA taxes were not withheld from my pay for 3 years because I was a tax-exempt live-in caregiver, how does that affect my future Social Security benefits and potential liability for unpaid FICA taxes?
Well, if you were legally not required to pay FICA taxes, there isn't a liability. I'd be worried if there was a liability and they just weren't paid, because your employer and you would each owe FICA tax on that. But in either case, if it wasn't recognized income for Social Security, it's not going to be recognized for the payment of your Social Security payment. A lot of people will say, I get paid cash. How does that how do I make sure that Social Security knows that? Well, tax or cash is tax avoidance, and that's not the way the system was designed. So you won't be able to claim Social Security on anything cash. Here, it sounds like it was a legal payment, but it there's no contribution to Social Security with those payments, and so therefore they aren't used to calculate your Social Security payment.
All right. Kiki Doc is asking, do the break-even ages for taking Social Security at full retirement age versus at age 70 account for needing to take out money from IRA and lose of return on that money over time?
No. Then this is one of the biggest issues people have with the break-even calculation. The Social Security Administration used to publish this on the website. I don't think it's been on there for years, but this used to be the holy grail of guidance, which is if you think you're going to live a long time, wait to claim Social Security, because you can see that after you reach age 78 or 82, depending on what you're comparing, you'll be better off because you're earning more in the distant future. The problem with break even is that it doesn't account for things like what you just said. If someone has to take out their entire life savings to pay for life until they reach full the break even point, well, that's a completely different calculation than if they're working until that time. And so I tell people that the break even calculation, if you want to even consider the break even calculation, you really should assume that calculation was put in place assuming that you were going to work until you started claiming Social Security. That's about the cleanest way for it to be analyzed. In reality, it still works if you live on cash, for example. You set aside a few years of cash to let your Social Security payment grow, but you need to understand that you are taking cash out of your account in lieu of letting your Social Security or in order to let your Social Security payment grow.
All right. Sweet Doggy Mom is asking, the earning test goes away at full retirement age. Is it true that you can suspend your payments to get the 8% per year growth?
It is true. It's 8% on the base that you had before. So if you were age 62, and assuming your full retirement age was age 67, if you took Social Security at age 62, you'd receive 70% of what you'd receive at full retirement age. If you restarted the withholding period once you reach full retirement age, it's 8% on the 70%. It's not 8% on the 100% you would have received if you had waited the entire time. So you get 8% per year on what you were receiving before from 67 through 70 in this example. So you can have up to 24% more of your 70% using that example. And of course, it's higher the longer you wait to claim. If you waited to claim to age 63, your base is 75%. At 64, 80%, 65, 86.66%. So that 8% increase is on what your previous base was.
Okay. Ramdin Hikes has a question regarding what's included in the earnings test. He's asking, I have rental property proceeds, YouTube payments, and consultant income that is deposited into my LLC rather than taken as personal income. Will that income into the LLC be taken into consideration for the earnings test?
Earned income, yes. Property income depends on how that's classified on your tax return. And it's a pretty complicated one because you can, if property is a passive investment, it gets classified one way. If you're actively managing the property, it gets, and you're managing a portfolio of properties, it gets classified another. But the general rule of thumb is if it's earned income, it counts, or if it's self-employment income, it counts. Income from your employer or income from self-employment. The gray area you have there is the property income.
Okay, ND1 Irish 901 is asking, I'm reaching full retirement in June. When should I begin the application process?
I'm assuming we're not talking about June 2026. June in the future, I would say, because we are in June. But I would start. You can start applying as early as 4 months out. There's no reason to not apply 4 months out. But I've seen people who've done it in a month, and so I would say the earlier the better, because staffing issues are quite tight at the SSA, and so give yourself some breathing room.
Okay, and Gail Kaplan is asking, if I wait past full retirement age, you get extra 8% for each year. Is it worth it to wait an extra year or two if you are healthy?
Possibly. This is we human beings have only so many hours in our lives, and so it depends on what you're giving up. If you need a bigger payment because you couldn't survive without it, absolutely. There's well, not absolutely, probably, but you're giving up 2 years of time, or a year of time, for every 8% that you get on your Social Security payment. Conversely, if you don't feel like you can make it without a larger payment, then the answer seems directionally pretty clear. On the flip side, if you've won the lottery and this is just fun money, well, then that's a different question altogether. So it depends on your individual circumstances and how important that extra 8% is versus the time that you're giving up to get that extra 8%.
Okay, Honey is asking, is there an age that your Social Security income is not affected no matter what income you make? And when can your Social Security not be taxed up to 85%?
So 2 different questions, 2 different answers. Yes, once you reach full retirement age, then you can earn as much as you want, and you don't have to give any of your Social Security payment back. Taxes on Social Security is a bit more of a complicated question, because there's a lot that goes into it. The base rule is, if you're single and you earn over $25,000, between $25,000 and $35,000, up to 50% of your Social Security payment may become taxable. Depends on a few different variables. And if you're 25 to 34,000, if you're earning over 34,000, then up to 85% of your Social Security payment may become taxable. If you're married filing jointly, the thresholds are 32,000 and 44,000. And so taxes on Social Security depend on not only the tax whether your Social Security is taxable or not, but if you have other deductions and you can offset that. There are a lot of deductions, like the new 65 plus deduction, which tends to offset a lot of that for a lot of people, as well as some other deductions for people that are in retirement. So possibly, but I would say that you should check with your favorite CPA to make sure that you're not overpaying tax when you don't need to worry about it.
All right, Ren has emailed in a question that he's asking, are there tools that can compare claiming Social Security early while preserving investments versus delaying benefits and drawing from retirement accounts?
All over the place. There are Social Security calculators that you can use. You can go onto my website and just go keyword search calculator, and you'll see several different Social Security calculators on there for different things. But they're pretty easy to find if you have somebody who has a website that has a lot of information on Social Security, mine and others. Just go on to Google and type in Social Security calculator, and you'll come back literally with hundreds of responses.
Okay, Tracy is asking, is it true that banks can freeze or delay large cash withdrawals by seniors while they verify that the account holder authorized the transaction?
Sure. But I wouldn't say it's just limited to seniors. I would say it's anybody. I had that happen to me a couple of months ago, and ironically, it was a check to the IRS on April 15th, and I got a notice from the bank saying, "Hey, did you authorize this payment?" Fortunately, I pay my taxes on time, and it wasn't a big number, but it was one that it was strange that I was getting the call. So yes, the the possibility exists that the bank can do it, but it's not a permanent freeze. They just want to make sure nothing funny is going on.
All right, we have a Medicare question from Krista. I'm 66 and will continue working until age 68 and a half, so my daughter can remain on my employer health insurance. Will delaying enrollment in a Medigap policy result in higher premiums because of my age?
Possibly, possibly. Depends on a couple of different things. There are states that have pooled premiums and everybody pays the same thing. There are states that have premiums that go up every year as you or there are policies that go up every year as you get older. And in that instance, yes. And then there are policies are that that are effectively not frozen because there's nothing that's frozen because there's still medical inflation in there and other other things that will cause the premium to go up. But those are based on your entry age. So if you delay because you're working and you don't need it and you work for an employer with 20 or more employees, and then you start at say age 68, well, the rate you would be paying at 68 could be higher unless you happen to be either in a state that requires one rate for the entire pool, or you happen to be buying a policy from a provider that has one rate for the entire pool.
All right, Gail Kaplan is asking, please explain ex-spousal Social Security if you are divorced.
No. So the Social Security Administration provides divorced spouse benefits to people who haven't remarried, and in some circumstances, if they have remarried, they get to choose whether they get the spousal benefit from their new partner or their old if they were over age 60. But the divorced spouse benefit basically is a benefit just like the spousal benefit. It's exactly the same numbers, same calculation. It works the same way. You can get up to 50% of your ex-spouse's benefit, and it doesn't affect his benefit or his new spouse or her new spouse in the least. It's one of the only benefits out there that doesn't touch the family maximum, because there is a family maximum. Someone could have 4 ex-spouses and they could each have the spousal benefit. Now, the requirement is that you have to have been married for 10 years. We talked about that a little bit earlier, but assuming you meet the marriage requirement, then or someone does, whoever you're referring to, then they can receive up to 50% of their ex-husband or ex-wife's Social Security payment.
All right, Tony Monero has a question about the Social Security Trustee Report. Today's Social Security Trustee Report says it's now 2032 Q4 when FICA receipts will be less than benefit payments. 22% deficit in Q4. Does this mean 22% reduction is triggered because insufficient receipts?
This is the question that we talk about a lot, and it's one that you almost have to step back and understand that what's going on in that report is a heck of a lot more important to us today, sitting on this live stream, than it is to most politicians. And it's not because politicians are inherently irresponsible. It's that they're dealing politics by the very nature of politics is they deal with problems today. Otherwise, they don't get elected tomorrow. And that's just the nature of politics, unfortunately. But The answer to the question is, if nothing is done, then the Social Security payments go down by 22%. Do I think that nothing's going to be done? I think that is highly, highly unlikely. Highly unlikely. Imagine 57 million people who are receiving Social Security suddenly getting 22% of their payment cut. You'd have at least 30% of them, that's all they have, and they're barely living with that. So you'd have 30% of that population now just they couldn't pay their bills. It would be horrible. And then a large portion of the balance people would they be in an untenable situation. I think what's most likely, and I've said this many times, I'm not swearing on a stack of Bibles for it, but I believe that this is the very likely outcome, is the same thing that happened in 1983 is going to happen again in 2032. And that is, as you approach the date, politicians finally have to deal with this. This Congress doesn't have to deal with this. It's the next Congress. This president doesn't have to deal with it. It's the next president. And so what ends up happening, and what happened in 1983, is there was a deficit. It came down to the wire. There were 2 months of reserves left in the Social Security Trust, and everybody banded together and they raised the FICA rate by 0.8%. That dealt with the issue right then and there. And then they slowly raised the Social Security age, the Social Security full retirement age, from age 65 to 67, starting 17 years forward. So in the year 2000, it started to go up one month for every year past that. So if you didn't retire before, if you retired before 2000, you took Social Security before 2000, your full retirement age was age 65. If you retired in 2001, 2002, 2003, it started going up 1 month per year, 65, 65 in 1 month, 65 in 2 months. So that's how they dealt with it then. I think it's unlikely, very unlikely, that they're just going to let people out there just stay in a bad position. I think it's much more likely that this is going to be dealt with. It's going to be dealt with in one of a dozen different ways. Most of them require raising FICA. Some of them require taking the cap off of the Social Security contribution. To be frank, that one doesn't actually fix the problem as much as you would think it would. And there are a few other solutions, but I don't think it's likely that in 2032 everybody's Social Security payment is going to be cut by 22%.
Okay. Tim Stenstrop is asking, when I die, will my wife of over 10 years receive 100% of my benefits?
So this is the survivor benefit, and the answer is generally yes, with one caveat, and that is if your wife was under her own full retirement age when she filed, there's going to be a reduction. The survivor benefit is a wonderful benefit because the recipient can get up to, well, if you were receiving 124% of your Social Security payment because you waited until age 70, your partner could get 124% too. But the provision there is that your partner has to wait until their own full retirement age to get 100% of your 124%. Otherwise, it starts to get haircut. You could have a situation where someone gets 124% of their payment, they pass away, and someone who's 62 starts claiming the same benefit that other people are getting at age 70. So it is reduced by the age of your spouse when she claims or he claims, depending on who we're talking about. But once they reach full retirement age, they get 100% of whatever your payment was. And just anecdotally, there's something called a widow's limit, which protects downside a little bit, way beyond the scope of this live stream. But if you're interested in it, just go to Holy Schmidt on YouTube and type in the word widow's limit, and there's a video on it somewhere.
Okay. Michael Swami's asking, does the divorced spouse rule apply to survivor benefits as well?
Yes, it does.
Okay. And Katie Hall has a clarification problem from a question you asked about Roth IRA. It says, so did he say a Roth IRA conversion only starts a new 5-year restriction if you are under 59 and a half?
No, so 59 and a half, 59 and a half, a lot changes at 59 and a half, and a lot of the 10% penalty for taking money out before 59 and a half goes away at 59 and a half. That was a long-winded way of saying what I just said now.
So the second part was then, but if you wait till 60 or older, that 5-year restriction goes away?
For that specific provision, yes.
Okay, great. All right. So we are at the top of the hour. Do you want to take one more question? One more Social Security question?
Sure, I'll take another Social Security question.
Okay, from Scott. If I already have 35 years of earnings on my Social Security record, will several years of low or no income before claiming benefits reduce my Social Security benefits?
Well, they won't improve your Social Security benefits. I don't know what your earnings were before, but if you've got 35 years of earnings and 30 of them were very low earning years and 5 of them were good years, then you're not going to have the same outcome as if you had 35 really good earning years. And you may need those extra years of work to round those 35 years up. And so I would say that look at your historical earnings, because your best 35 years are what they take. And if you look at that and you say, you know what, I work like a lot of people. I worked a job at night loading boxes to pay for college or whatever, and that's part of my 35 years, and maybe that's not a lot of money back even today. Well, maybe you want to continue to work for a little bit longer to let some of those years roll off.
All right. So I think that's all we have time for tonight. Thank you so much for all of your questions you've put in the chat box. And for those that were emailed in, we really appreciate that. And Jeff, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
All right, gang. So it's 8 o'clock New York time, and I think we're done for the night. Thanks for those who sent in questions. Thanks for those who asked questions. Try to get through as many of them as we can. And so we appreciate you staying up with us and watching us. We'll see you here next Tuesday at 7 p.m. And in the meantime, if you have questions, just fire them across and we'll try to get to them on the next live stream. All right, gang. Thanks very much, Jill. Thank you for your expert production of tonight's live stream, and appreciate all that you do for us. All right, with that, I think we're done. So I'm going to end the stream and see you next week.